In 1907, the first cars ever seen in China arrived by sea in Peking. They were here because a French newspaper had proposed a car race from Peking to Paris. 5 cars took up the challenge, and almost incredibly, 4 of them made it to Paris. They put the motorcar on the map. For better and for worse, its power over us has been increasing ever since. The first car to arrive in Paris was a big État. It was led into the city by a band playing the Grand March from Aida. The triumphant driver, Prince Scipione Borghese, and the journalist who travelled with him, Luigi Barzini, became famous. And for 90 years now, men have dreamed of somehow doing it all again. In the early summer of 1997, many of the new Peking to Paris adventurers met in England at the clubhouse of the old Brooklands racing circuit. We'd come to have our cars scrutinised and to scrutinise our competitors and size up the opposition. While we were here, there was a chance to meet the man who had created the 10,000-mile, 6-week enterprise, the man who was setting the route and who would thus become our taskmaster on the long road ahead, the rally director, Philip Young.
When they come out of Kathmandu, they've got 2 wonderful days in Nepal, really, really beautiful. It's the first day is a good tarmac road, and it's like Kenya. Yeah. And there's the first sort of taste of sort of African-type motoring with parrots and elephants, and go through tiger parks, and it's a good road. And then they camp, and then it's just a complete contrast. It's awful. They go through 17 rivers in one morning.
Through 17 rivers?
6 of them are
not
wider.
over?
Through them. 6 rivers are wider than the Thames. So we've got big problems with it. And it's only because the bridges are washed away in the monsoons, otherwise... So this is the East-West Highway coming up the bottom of Nepal. It's a wonderful road, and they won't ever forget it. It's the most breathtaking experience. And that takes them into India, a tiny little checkpoint with a straw hat, and one man stamping all the paper.
Philip Young was not sending us north on the old 1907 route across Siberia. These days, that would be too easy. There are good roads. To give us a challenge in the spirit of the original adventure, we would go west, right across China into Tibet and over the Himalayas on the highest road in the world. Then there'd be a string of deserts and mountains in Nepal, India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Greece, Italy, Austria, Germany, and finally France. Even before we started, we began to see the Eiffel Tower in our mind's eye, that faraway journey's end. It wasn't till September, a few days before the start, that we all came together. 94 cars with over 200 drivers, navigators and backseat passengers from 22 nations gathered in Peking for a burst of partying and last-minute checking of spares and tuning of engines.
The bone was showing, and they took scrapings and analysed it and said the bone's died, so we'll have to terminalise it. Nice word for putting the bloody thing off. And so I went in to have that done, and while I was there, the absolutely rivetingly gorgeous lady doctor was totally distracting me. I said, can you do that with yours? You know, sort of move it sideways, but from that point. And she said, no. I said, do you think an X-ray might be a good idea? She said, oh yes. So we went at X-ray, and look, you could drive a bus through the joint. So, through what should have been joined. So, surgeon came along. He was a lovely chap. He used to be my girlfriend's boyfriend many years ago, you know, when they were both in pony clubs. So, we had a lovely chat. And he said, well, I can repin it. I can sort of cut it down there and repin it all. And I said, when we will know? And he said, oh, about 25th, 26th of August, you can come in and have the pins out. And I said, if it doesn't work, you're going to have to cut it off. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I want to be getting on a plane just after that. I don't want to be getting on a plane with a finger that's just been cut off. Not in the third world, thank you very much. Can you just pull these stitches out for me, you know, in Chinese.
So the choice really was between having the fingers off altogether,
yeah,
or taking a risk on not being able to make the rally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fingers every time.
Yep, every time.
It was the first time that those of us from the European side of the Atlantic got a chance to meet some of the American competitors.
Well, welcome to the American entry in the competition, a 1954 Packard our UK friends say Picard.
No, they don't.
I do. I'd say Packard,
Packard.
but you'd say Packard.
Packard.
Let's call the whole thing off.
This car, throughout the 40s, the 50s, and the 30s, was a marvelous American automobile. It didn't change its design fast enough in the mid-50s to stay up with post-World War II changes in automobile design. It's a very strong car, comfortable, spacious. And the technology, the flat 8 engine, the drive system, all would suggest that it's strong enough to make this demanding trip.
Every car had to be a model at least 30 years old. Many were much older. Oldest of all was the American one with the French name, the La France. It dates back 90 years. It's the same vintage as the Itala that won the 1907 race. Hermann Leyer, who cheerfully styles himself Hermann the German, was robustly optimistic about its chances.
Oh, he feels young. We just have to reach Himalaya. It's the highest mountain in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we reach Everest, we can roll it down to Paris. No higher mountain in between.
Is it a strong car, do you reckon?
Yeah. Stronger than me?
Built like a truck.
No, like a car now, in that days.
What's his weakest point, would you say?
The driver.
The equally magnificent 1927 Mercedes, driven by Etienne Veen and Robert Dean, was having electrical problems.
We pulled the car out of the warehouse and said, okay, let's hop in and turn the engine on and let's go.
Yeah.
We hopped in. Oh, okay. There it stopped. He says, well, there's something to do with the magneto, so we better check it. We checked the magneto, didn't work. Then he said, well, maybe give it a push. Yeah, we pushed it. And that was one of our biggest mistakes. By pushing, we destroyed. Okay, well, we agreed also that whatever happens, it's always my fault. So there's no argument about whose fault.
We've decided that anything that goes wrong is Etienne's fault, and then that saves any arguments.
But look, this is a bit of a blow to you, because not long ago you were saying that the one thing you were sure of was the car. Nothing would stop the car.
Oh, I'm still sure of the car. It's always a human fault.
It's the mechanic's fault.
But this wasn't a human fault, this was a magneto.
It's a magneto.
Whatever a magneto is.
Well, and it's okay. It just happens. It's a thing. Thing can go wrong, and things can break. This one just broke. We have to fix it, repair it, and then we're on our way. And I think that by the day is over, we fix it and we'll be.
So your confidence is not dented.
Oh no way. I'm happy, and you'll see it on Saturday. We'll be along with the other one. We'll see you on the Great Wall.
3 days later, we were convoying towards the Great Wall, where the official start would take place. By the time of the start, 2 cars had already pulled out. It had been a long way to come in order to discover terminal mechanical problems, but the remaining 92 were running smoothly. No one pretended the challenge we were facing was as severe as in 1907, but it was a long road ahead, 10,000 miles, 16,000 kilometers, and we knew that we were in for rather more than a Sunday drive in the country. In 1907, the Peking to Paris Raiders, as they were called, took a route which faced them with almost unpassable gorges as soon as they left Peking. A pattern was set then, which many of our cars would follow now, that when they got stuck in narrow passes or on impossible goat tracks, and when they broke down, they would be manhandled and pushed and pulled through, and thus keep going towards the all-important destination, Paris. For Lord Montague, there was trouble only a few miles after the start. The fan of his Prince Henry Vauxhall came loose and savaged the radiator. It was the beginning of the end. The Vauxhall would soon have to quit, and Lord Montague would carry on with whoever had space for him in their overloaded cars. The rest drove on, more or less in convoy, which the Chinese police insisted on in the first few days. We were on the road to our first overnight stop, a town called Zhangjiakou. By day 2, we'd spent a night in our first unlovely hotel. There'd be more of them, along with some really fine hotels when the chance came. But some were so bad that competitors pitched tents outside rather than share a bed with the local bedbugs. We were still in convoy, as much as 92 old cars of assorted temperament and speed could be in convoy. Our destination now, deeper into China, was a city called West Batu. It was on the morning of day 3 that we lost Lord Montagu's Vauxhall forever. It would soon be on a ship home to England. We, though, were still motoring, fingers crossed and touching wood. The destination on the third day was Yinchuan, and the road, especially for drivers hurrying to make the next time control, held a surprise. Hermann the German had been storming along all day. At Yinchuan, he was in a heroic mood. Everyone enjoyed a good breakfast in a comfortable hotel, though one driver who'd been out for an early morning walk was put off his food by the sight of an open truck carrying convicted men to a public execution. Why be surprised, he was asked. In China, we execute 400 people every week. By this fourth day, we were getting into parts of China where no Westerner had driven before. Up ahead, there were hills. Day 5 at Lanzhou was what the rally director called a rest day. For many, that was a euphemism for this.
Bring it over here. You could use just support on the...
On the morning of day 6, Hermann the German led us out of Lanzhou. The roads were slippery, too slippery for one of the government cars escorting us. Fortunately, no one was seriously hurt. There'd be no town or city tonight, and no hotel, just our tents. We were getting into the mountains now, and some drivers were beginning to feel the first symptoms of altitude sickness, headaches and nausea. Next morning, the Buick Woody Wagon had it. With a crushing selection of mechanical problems, they were quitting. The elegant old Marmon had dropped out too. The La France had a new driver. The wind chill you experience while going at 65 miles an hour with no windscreen had been too much for Hermann. He'd got hypothermia and the beginnings of pneumonia. His co-driver would take over until the doctor decided Hermann was fit to join him. It was on that 7th day that we saw our first snow. Later, we dropped down below the snow line again. Often, people were so pleased to see us, it made us feel like pop stars. But that illusion passed, and then we'd feel more hemmed in than was actually comfortable. The driver in one car wound down the windows to return greetings from some enthusiastic kids, only to find them energetically hurling yak dung into the car. Before nightfall, most of us arrived in our last town in China, Golmud, a hotel, a shower, and a night in a bed. But for some, it was another night in a garage. On day 8, we learned that Hermann the German had been sent home by the doctor, and the La France was out. Somewhere ahead lay the worst roads our poor cars had faced so far, but the day began smoothly enough. good snack. The roads were good here, good but for the fact that the Chinese engineers build them on embankments, which means that if you go off, you have a long way to roll. But for that, and the fact that they build the bridges after the roads. That meant a diversion around each bridge building site. Diversions into mud, sweat and tears. Somewhere along here we passed into Tibet, but because it's part of China these days, however unwillingly, there was no formal border. By the time we pitched camp on our 8th night, most of us were suffering from altitude sickness. A good many had the runs as well, and for them, even the worst hotel we'd been in seemed a paradise now. The latrines here were miles away. Next morning was cold and clear. Many cars had suffered on the bad roads the day before, and some hadn't made it to the camp. A few had crawled in late last night.
Well, basically we we got our starting time, left there, and about 2 kilometres from the hotel we heard a clunk. And we thought it was a flat, but we looked out and it was our shock absorber was sort of hanging and flapping against the wheel. So we had to go back. We went back, and Trevor from the support team took it off, and then we had to go and find a welding shop to go and get it welded. Drove around, people were like quite unhelpful initially, and then we found this really, really good guy who was a mechanic, and he said that he'd bring us. So he got into the car with Colin, and I walked to find the car. He took us to a welding shop, and the welders aren't mechanics, and the mechanics aren't welders, so you need 2 of them. So it took us 3.5 hours to get it going, but the guys were like great, they were brilliant. The welder was really good, did everything really meticulously.
But that means that by the time you got over that, to all that really bad stuff,
it was
the bumpy
it was
stuff
really
off the roads,
bad.
it was dark by then, wasn't it?
It wasn't quite dark because it didn't get dark until about 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
But it was really, really torn up because it'd been raining, and all you guys had been through it, as well as massive trucks, and it left like knee-high ditches of mud. So
This little car got through.
Yeah, we nearly got stuck a few times, but Colin was brilliant. His driving skills really, really, really helped us and got us out.
What's the problem?
I'll do anything I can to help it go easy. In fact, I think we helped our time a lot today because we got the car out of the situation so that when the fellas came along, it took so little time considering what it would have done.
What's stopping you now?
We just can't get enough power. It's just the carburation is just the whole car is underpowered between 0 and 15 miles an hour.
Why do you know?
Why? Why?
Why? Because there's not enough air.
There's just not enough air. This engine needs air. It has 2 carburetors. Decision was made by the mechanics that we would just open up the carburetors down the bottom and this would work. Well, it hasn't worked. That's what lost us our first 13 minutes, first day we hit the mud. Because we had no experience with this, but 48 hours later we learned to remove the damper trick, and that served us well a couple of times. Now we're getting a little bit too high, even that's not serving us well. So thank you for coming along. That's why I have the tow rope ready, because I am so glad when I see people who are willing to help that I want to do all I can to make their life easier.
Welcome
too.
to our so far magnificent vehicle. So far.
Hi.
Very simple.
Little village for the last checkpoint. We were in very heavy dust, and I couldn't see anything, and I tried to pull to the left so I could look around the vehicle in front of me. And at that point, the road narrowed because there was a village that I didn't even know was there. I couldn't see a thing. We hit a culvert. The culvert collapsed under our weight, and we bent the left wheel, strut, I think they call it, and slid across about, let's say, 12 or 15 feet diagonally to our left. And now we're going fast. And I don't know if this car can take it this fast. Not too fast! Slow down! So after checking ourselves out and making sure we were okay, and reminding ourselves that since we were okay, the rest of it didn't matter, and after a big hug, we certainly a big Peruvian, where are we? Tibetan group came around, and we're quite amazed by the sight, I'm sure, of two women in the car, and but they were quite friendly and quite curious. Well, after about 5 minutes of waving people on, Jenny came up with the idea of trying to just take a shovel and dig out and take a good look at what was happening. We might even be able to back it up out of this ravine, this little muddy gully we were in. So I said, well, frankly, we're not doing anything else. I'd rather be doing something than just standing around waiting for the four-wheel drive guys to come along. And we no sooner started to do that when the villagers decided that what they were going to do is lift the car out of this gully. And amazingly enough, they got us pushed out enough that they were able to actually lift the car with their version of heave-ho, with a lot of laughter, a lot of smiles, and a couple of breathers. They actually got us to the point we were out of the mud, and we were able to look at the damage much closer. So we decided, well, the best thing for us to do was to try to get the wheel that was very bent off, and that didn't take too much effort, especially since we did have help from some of the villagers. Some of the men helped us out, and we definitely got a kick out of it. So we then Jenny got under the car and took a look, and we could pretty much tell that whatever the right wheel was going to do, the left wheel wasn't going to do very much with it. It was bent way out to the left. But we did get the other wheel on, and I was able to then drive it to a safer spot so that we would not be in the way of the other rally participants. And we were far more visible. And really within about 5 minutes of having done that, the crew came along and had their own jacks underneath the car and just went to work. Took the parts off that were bent and took the vise and pounded away until they got everything as straight as they could, and we were off and running. And our payment to the villagers was to give our supply of lifesavers away to the children, which they found quite delightful, and it was the least we could do, because I frankly thought we might even be out of the race at that point. And we actually managed to get to the checkpoint to still qualify for gold.
Yeah, I had some problems. It's awful heavy. It's much harder than I'd expected, and the altitude is so hard, and it's really hitting you like a hammer. Driving the car at these high altitudes, driving a truck, it's exhausting, and everything went well until I reached camping site last night. I stepped out of the car and wanted to put up the tent, and all of a sudden I was out of breath, and well, I didn't lose control, but I had to sit down and say, you know, take it easy. And although everybody had told me, be careful, don't rush, take your time, you know, we still want to do a lot of things because we have to do petrol, check the car, get some food. So I had a pretty rough night last night, and the doc, the med came, gave me some pills and injection, and well, I slept pretty well last night. And this morning I got up and it's all gone.
The word shock absorber seemed to be on everyone's lips. Some cars were bouncing gaily. Yesterday's roads had destroyed their shockers completely. After 2 consecutive nights of camping, Lhasa meant a hotel and hot water and a rest day. A chance for some to visit the Tibetan capital's attractions.
We're at the top of the Potala Palace, looking out over Lhasa.
Really special. I'm glad we came.
Day 13 took us further and higher into Tibet, with the promise that tonight we'd camp with a view of Mount Everest. Day 13, it was unlucky for some.
There was a Peugeot and he was standing there in the soft, and I can pick the Peugeot and jump them or go to the left. And to the left there was a big putt, and I go in the putt and I lost my wheel.
We were up at 17,000 feet now, highest road in the world, the first rally to come up here. Heads ached, fingers froze, but some competitors were reveling in it. What we didn't have time for as we sped along was to take in properly the lunar landscape of High Tibet, this country whose frontiers have been closed to the outside world for so long. The landscape is thrown into sharp relief by the crystal clear light which goes with the thin, unpolluted air up here. When we got to the Everest camp, it was hard to be certain exactly which peak actually is the big one. After the Everest camp, it was technically downhill all the way to Paris, but that didn't mean it was going to be easy. The gorges in this last part of Tibet were spectacular, as steep as those that you see in Chinese paintings but never quite believe could be real. The route down out of Tibet was one we'd been warned about. It had been cut by a landslide the week before, and road gangs had managed to clear just enough for us to squeeze through. Our cars would be the first private ones to come down this road, if we could get over the obstacles. Our goal at the bottom of the mountain was Friendship Bridge, the frontier with Nepal. The frontier had only been open a few months, and no one had driven private cars across before. On the Nepalese side, a welcome to take away the memories of bleak Tibet.
in the bowl of the Kathmandu Valley. There are mountains all around, and I remember from last year the level of pollution. It's thick because there's all the Tata buses and bikes belching out huge clouds of black smoke. But the warmth of the people and the genuineness of the welcome is stunning.
And I think that we're all very
At
glad to be here.
Kathmandu there was a first-class hotel. The cars went on display. The Crown Prince of Nepal paid a visit. He was hosted by the rally director and Lord Montague.
It's been a great experience. We've got 2 more days of driving to do, and of course these will be very different days from what we've had. And one of the great things is that from the organisers' point of view, we brought you so many.
Yes, indeed.
In 90 out of 96, we couldn't have done better.
Except for mine.
Well, you let the side down.
The Crown Prince left in a Mercedes old enough to be on the rally, obviously a man of taste and discernment. Here at Kathmandu we had 2 rest days. It was a sort of unofficial halfway point. For those whose cars were in good shape, there was time to see the sights. On our 18th day we were on the road again with the competitors going hard. We were on the way to another camping place, but first the worrying river crossings we'd all been warned about. The rally director excelled himself that day. Not just 1 river, but 4. He'd wanted the water to be higher, but it had fallen 2 feet in the last week. We didn't particularly mind that. Next morning, luxury. It was warm enough to wash, not like the freezing camps in China and Tibet. Every Nepalese town was ready with a welcome. They made us feel like heroes. But you only had to remember what the original Peking to Paris adventurers went through in 1907 to regain your perspective. They were heroes. We thought we'd seen bureaucracy back in China, but when we got to the Indian border, we were shown what it really means. They methodically entered all our details and all our cars' details in a ledger. We moved on to another room, and there they methodically entered all our details and all our cars' details in another ledger. Then we moved on to a third place, and there they methodically entered all our details and all our cars' details in another ledger. It took 4 weary hours to get the cars into India, and it was getting dark as we climbed up towards the hill station at Nainital, which would be our resting place for the night. At the start next morning, we learned that on the climb up here the evening before, one of the Land Rovers had gone off the mountain and fallen 40 feet. It had lodged against a tree and been hauled up this morning. The driver and co-driver had been only slightly injured, and they would soon be flying home to England, bruised, but probably believing in miracles. The rest of us, perhaps a little more carefully, carried on with the journey. Our destination that night was Delhi and the splendid Ashok Hotel, complete with an elephant and a dance of welcome. Next day, a fast drive to another slow border crossing, Indian bureaucracy again. And then we were into Pakistan and heading for Lahore. Lahore has been the capital of the Punjab for over 1,000 years. It was the centre of the Mughal Empire, and it boasts one of the world's biggest mosques, the Badshadi, with a courtyard for 50,000 people. By day 23, the rally director was getting worried. Things had obviously been too easy, because there was no clear leader. Too many drivers had got this far with very few penalty points. On the 24th day, the rally director planned to sort out the sheep from the mountain goats with a hill climb. The average speed was set impossibly high. No one could achieve it. But the faster you went, the fewer penalty points you'd get. In theory, the road was closed for us, but no one seemed to have told the lorry drivers. Here, John and Simon Catt were to relinquish first place, although they'd managed to hold it ever since Tibet. The Flying Dutchman, in their little 2CV, would soon drop from second place to 29th after an off-road excursion broke their suspension. The Brodericks, in their ex-David Steele Ford Anglia, also faltered, slipping from third place when their throttle cable broke. All this allowed Phil Surtees, in his indomitable Jeep, to seize the lead. The Jeep was just ahead of the fast Ford coupe of the man from Alabama, Ted Thomas. Later the same day, on the way to Quetta, a father and son team from Germany, René and Joseph Veit, crashed in their Volkswagen. Tragically, both were killed. A day later, and we crossed into Iran. Our 3 Iranian cars were on home ground long before the rest of us would be. We got a generous, open-handed welcome in Iran. Clearly, many Iranians were pleased to have a rally going through their country for the first time since the London to Sydney 20 years ago.
Something good. Go. Down. She says it better than I do.
Some Iranians weren't so pleased to see us. We got used to having stones thrown at us as we drove through Iranian towns. At the town of Bam, we had a rare lunch break with time for a quick look at the extraordinary fortress city built of mud. On the 29th day out of Peking, we reached the city of Isfahan, founded on the route of the old camel caravans. At the Iranian-Turkish border, we were processed smoothly on day 32. Mercifully, no one else seems to do it like the Indians. Our first night in Turkey was at an out-of-season ski resort, Palandöken. On day 33, the lead was still held by Phil Surtees and John Bayliss in their Willis Jeep. Small, open, hard-sprung, and in their hands, seemingly unstoppable. After a night at Cappadocia, we drove through surreal rock formations. Paris was still a long way off, but at least we were on the road now to a city with an exotic magic of its own, Istanbul. Over the Bosphorus, from Asia into Europe. That made us feel we were on the home stretch now. In Istanbul, as Phil and John pedalled the Jeep past the Blue Mosque, people tried to sell us carpets, of course, and we took a look at the sights. By day 38, we were in Greece and back on mountain roads and gravel.
Thank you so much. Have a good trip and good luck. Thank you a lot. Bye-bye.
The driving was challenging again, and there was little chance to make out places. Still less to marvel at the Meteora monasteries perched on top of pinnacles like the heads on top of matchsticks. We skirted Mount Olympus and Mount Parnassus, notorious Acropolis rally stages which have been emasculated by tarmac. Then came the incredible Corinth Canal and the crossing into the Peloponnese, with a drive through orange groves along the Gulf of Corinth to Patras and the ferry to Italy. The only land route from here would lead us into the turbulent Balkans, not a good idea at the moment. So the way ahead would be by sea across the Adriatic to Ancona. At the docks, a face last seen long ago in China appeared. Herman the German was rejoining with his mighty La France to accompany us up through Europe to Paris.
Oh, very nice to see you back.
Oh, thanks. How are you? Good so far.
Completely recovered?
Oh no, 90%. But it's like every time. Driver is the weak point of the team. So, but I'm very glad to be back. You know, it's not because of the car or something like that. It's because of the people. It was such a nice bunch of people. I had to return. It was not so easy to get the car flown from Peking to Istanbul, and this gave me time to recover a little bit. But it's very strange. In this weather, I still feel cold.
We would spend a comfortable night on the good ship Patra and dock at Ancona next evening. Next day at Rimini, Lord Montague, who'd come most of the way from China thumbing lifts, took delivery of a blower Bentley brought out from his collection. Now he could accompany the rally up to Paris on his own wheels. After a night at a fine old hotel on Lake Garda, we climbed up into Austria for the Arlberg Pass, and more snow than we'd seen in the Himalayas. It must have been some sort of end-of-term feeling. The marshals were getting out of hand.
Who said that?
Adam, drive the car, I'll drive it.
Oh, Greg, you deserve something well.
Adam, get in, we're gonna be late.
How can I drive this thing? It's like a bloody... It's like a toboggan. Look at that.
Drive it.
How am I supposed to drive that?
Drive it quickly.
By nightfall, the whole rally would be in Germany. We'd cross 3 countries in one day, and there'd be another one tomorrow. Still in the lead, the Jeep. In second place, still the Ford Coupe of Ted Thomas and Vic Zanis. Just north of Colmar, we helped celebrate the grape harvest in the medieval village of Riekveer. It's one of those places in Alsace which have shuttled back and forth between Germany and France over the years like a tennis ball on the centre court. The mayor opened up his town gates and his cobbled high street, especially for us. This was France and the 42nd day. Almost home now, just one more overnight in Reims. In Reims, the people seemed to think it was all over. There was champagne and flowers.
You can get his card, sure.
And then, 6 weeks and 1 day since leaving Peking, it was the dreamed-of day. Some cars had been limping badly, and every car was being nursed to make sure it would be there when we hit the traffic jams of Paris on a Saturday morning. Behind us were China, Tibet, Nepal, India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Greece, Italy, Austria, and Germany.
Dinner tickets, reception tickets. Okay.
Is this the one you did up for me? I was going to be driving this.
I'm so sorry you didn't get to come along. It was a really interesting little ride.
A little ride. Well, I envy you. Did you have a lot to do to the car? Well done. Well done.
The champagne reception with Buick is over where the first flag is, and you come and have a drink.
Come on the roof.